Take a prison somewhere in Panama. In that prison, you have many criminals, both foreigners as well as locals, that are serving long sentences. One of them is a guy called Diego, and he has to serve a sentence of 10 years. Another guy is Peter. He's a British guy. Well, his mother is from Panama, but okay, he considers himself British. And he has to serve a sentence of 20 years. So one day they meet one another, they have some chat, and Diego asks Peter, which he calls Pedro, he asks him, Pedro, how come you have to serve 20 years? Punishments are not that high in Panama lately. And you were convicted 3 years ago. Why do you still need to serve 17 years? And then Peter confessed, well, I tried to rob this house. Well, actually, I robbed the place. But then I encountered the owner of the place. And he attacked me. I defended myself. And he ended up dying. But he encountered me on the streets, not in his own place. It's after I left his house and I was on the streets that I encountered him. And then Diego asked him, did you have any backup? And then Peter asked him, backup? What are you talking about, man? And then Diego told them, dude, how can you seriously think you can just walk into any house, rob the place on your own, and leave without any consequences? Did you check the neighborhood? Did you check the roads? Did you arrange a car that could pick you up after you were done? Why didn't you rob the place together with a few guys? Then you all could have carried the loot together. So you carried all the weight of all that jewelry and all that money on your back? Of course the owner would encounter you. You are carrying a load on your back, so you can't run away. Dude, how could you be so dumb? You could have realized that by doing this, you would be trapping yourself. And then Peter was thinking, you know what? This Diego, what he's saying to me is true. And then Diego told him, Pedro, the reason I'm here was because one of my fellow gang members became a rat. He snitched on us just to get a better deal with the prosecutor. Everything was well planned. We just had a traitor amongst us. That's different. But you just went there out of a pure impulse, not considering any consequences. You didn't prepare anything and just expect it to work out well. Dude, you brought this on yourself, man. And Peter told him, Diego, that's true. And now I need to sit 17 more years in this place. Then Diego told him, you could have got out of this situation with only 3 months if you had a good lawyer. Some do that. If you broke in with a group of people and you are a foreigner, you could have easily told your lawyer that you were placed under pressure because you were a foreigner and the locals pressed you into doing it, and your lawyer could have made a case on your behalf and you would only have served 3 months. Now, you've been in for 3 years and you have to go 17 more. There are even hitmen that killed multiple people that don't sit for 20 years. So even your sentence is a rip-off. What you did, you should have received 5 years, maximum. Because you were not in the man's house when he attacked you. He attacked you on the street, so he was in the wrong. Even though you were the one that robbed his place, he was in the wrong. So You should have gotten 5 years. You would have registered it as self-defense. But because of your lack of knowledge of how the Panama judicial system works, because of your lack of understanding in dealing with things in a practical way, you're now left with a 20 years prison sentence. Haven't you noticed, Pedro, that most of the prisoners around here are talking about you thinking, what? They're thinking, how come this guy, he's British, so he is entitled to British involvement in his case. How come he got 20 years? They're local murderers that don't get as much as you. And you're also a foreigner. You can use the British embassy to talk on your behalf, and they can pressure the Panamanian government, and they may even release you. You may even be transported to Britain to serve your sentence in Britain on British terms. Now, that was the parable. I know it's a long one. If you need to stop this video and go back and listen to it again, do it. What do you notice in this story? You have a guy, Diego, who's a local. He knew he was involved in the wrong stuff, but he was caught off guard because one of the conspirators was a traitor. The other one didn't even have any plan, nor any strategy. That's Peter, he didn't even use his common sense. He was a British national, so anytime he got into legal trouble, he was entitled to assistance from the British embassy. And because Britain has an enormous say in the economy of Panama, he could use that as a leverage to get a lighter sentence or even escape a sentence completely. So even the other prisoners think, how can this guy be so dumb? Doesn't he know who he is? A British national? Doesn't he know that he has a leverage over others that commit a crime in Panama? Why isn't he using a leverage? Why is he tolerating this situation? Why did he allow them to victimize him by giving him 20 years? While hitmen that kill 2, 3, 4 men only get 10, 15 years. Sometimes they are gone after 7 years. And even local people from Panama that end up in this jail, they use peer pressure and political pressure to get out. And this guy received a conviction that was way out of line, and he doesn't even realize that he was being used by local politicians to make a statement. Was it wrong of him to rob that place? Yes. But it was also wrong of the owner of the place to attack him on the streets when he was away from his house. He should have called the police and let authorities deal with him. So when that owner of that house attacked him and he defended himself and the other died, by law, he was in the right, and by law, he should have received a light sentence. That he robbed the place, he could have received another sentence for that, separately. But even then, he wouldn't have ended up with 20 years. The reason I made this parable is to make you think, believer. Just like that Peter in that story, there are many believers out there. They allow a lot of bad stuff to happen to them or to happen around them that they could have easily shook off of them if they walked by faith. Some believers are carrying sicknesses and diseases with them. There are even some believers that die prematurely, though the diseases like cancer or infections or whatever, or tumors. And then you think, hold on a minute. If you have the Holy Spirit, that means you have the provision of God inside of you, why don't you walk in the provision to overcome all the violence against your health? If you claim to follow Christ, who is the healer, Christ who took all who took all our sicknesses and sins in his own body at the cross, if that's what you believe, and you also believe that that same Christ, after he died, he rose again, and that his resurrection power is available to you, then why aren't you walking in that resurrection power? Let me go back to the example I gave of that guy called Peter. Let's make the parable worse. Not only is Peter a British national, not only can he use the British embassy to have a leverage in his situation, his parents are also millionaires. His parents own assets in Latin America. So if his father or his uncle would decide to fire many people in Latin America, criminality would increase because a lot of families become homeless. So not only is he a British national, his family also contributes to the economy of Latin America in general. So his family has more leverage than the Panama government itself in Panama when it comes to his case. And when the prisoners found out about this, they fainted. They were thinking, what? This guy also has relatives, family members who are millionaires? Whoa! And he's still here? Serving a 20-year sentence? What? Don't you realize, believers, that there are worldly people that have the same or worse reaction to you as a believer when they see you operating in darkness? So that's why when someone says they are a believer, they're often ridiculed by the world. Why? Because unbelievers see too many inconsistencies in God's people. I'm not talking about attending church, morals, norms, and values, because those things are artificial. I'm talking about reality here. If you walk by faith, you walk in the resurrection power of Christ, you still have a mortal body, so your body is not immortal, but you will benefit from his immortality. That means that in daily life, no trouble, no attack, no violence will be able to stand against you. And after a while, it's violence fleeing from you. It's danger fleeing from you instead of the other way around. So after a while, you don't even have to cope with anything. Bad things need to cope with you, and they can't. So there will be tribulation, or where I said there will be persecution, but despite the persecution, there will be victory, and there will be abundance, there will be prosperity. That is how it ought to be with believers. How come believers claim to be backed up by the source himself, God, yet they have a similar fatalistic thinking like those in the world? And sometimes their circumstances are worse than the commoner of the world. How can it be? How can it be that it often happens in churches that when one of the members of that congregation has a terminal sickness or terminal illness, that they tell him or tell her, well, God has a plan for you, you're going to heaven, things are going to be better? No! No, no, no! They should stand up, rejoice, and decree and declare the destruction of the disease, so the human being is saved and delivered, so Christ is glorified. But instead, many of those people that claim to follow Christ, they agree with the affliction. They agree with persecution. They agree with negative wills. They agree with poverty. They agree with stagnation. They agree with the disease that's destroying the one that's under attack. So they're actually agreeing with Satan. Yet they come in the name of Christ. What is this? Believers, unlearn the contradictions and inconsistencies of pagan Christianity. I'm telling you, unlearn them so you walk in the real power, serving the real King. That's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.